The desert wind howled like a dying animal, carrying with it the bitter taste of dust and blood. A lone rider urged his tired bay gelding along the narrow trail, sun burning high above, shadows crawling across the canyon walls. His boots hung heavy in the stirrups, his hat tilted low, the weight of silence pressing on him like a coffin lid. That was when he saw her. At first, she looked like a broken scarecrow tangled in the brittle sagebrush. Arms bound, veil drawn tight over her face, dress torn and stained with dust. Her head lolled weakly as if life itself had nearly slipped away. The rider reined up sharp, the horse pawing at the earth, and his hand went instinctively to the colt on his hip. Before he could speak, the figure stirred. Her voice came thin as a reed in the wind. "Please, end me before they arrive." The words froze him where he sat. A plea, not for help, not for water, but for death. His grip tightened on the reins, leather creaking under callous fingers. "Lady," he rasped, throat dry, "who's coming?" No answer, only the veil shifting as her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. He swung down from the saddle, boots crunching against gravel, the air between them charged heavy, like the pause before thunder breaks. His hand trembled as he reached toward that veil, and then he lifted it. What he saw made him stumble back, heart slamming like a hammer inside his ribs. The face beneath was marked, scarred by fire or blade. Yet it wasn't the scars that shook him. It was recognition. The eyes that stared back through pain and ash were ones he'd seen before long ago, in another life, eyes he had buried in memory. He staggered, voice breaking. "God Almighty!" The woman's lips trembled, but she said nothing, only closed her eyes, as though bracing for bullets she had begged for. From far off came the low thunder of hooves. Raiders, a dozen at least by the sound. The canyon carried their echoes, wrapping them in dread. The rider swore under his breath. He cut her bonds quick with the edge of his knife, hauled her up onto his horse, though she fought weakly against him. "Save your strength," he muttered, jaw set. "We ride." The gelding bolted down the canyon path. Stones flying, the woman slumped against his chest. Behind them, the shouts of men rang out, sharp and cruel, mingling with the clatter of iron horseshoes. The desert sun glared, blinding, as if heaven itself refused to watch. They tore through gulches and dry washes, dust boiling up in their wake. Every turn of the trail tightened the noose. Red cliffs hemmed them in. Shadows lengthened like grasping hands. The woman stirred, whispering through cracked lips. "You should have let me die." He gritted his teeth, pressing her closer, so she wouldn't slip. "Not my way." The horse labored hard, foam flecking its mouth, but the sound of pursuit grew nearer. A rifle cracked. A bullet spat stone beside them. Another shot sang past his hat brim. The raiders were closing fast, at a split in the canyon. He yanked the reins hard, cutting into a narrow defile where only one rider could pass at a time. The horse stumbled but pushed forward, hooves striking sparks. Shouts echoed behind. The woman lifted her face weakly toward him. For the first time, words left her lips with a sharp edge. "They won't stop. Not till I'm dead or worse." The rider's eyes narrowed, a shadow crossing his face. He didn't ask who they were. Didn't ask why. Some truths a man knows in his bones without need for words. The trail spat them out onto a ledge overlooking the desert floor. Wind tore at his coat as he pulled the horse up hard. Below, the land stretched wide, unforgiving, painted in fire by the dying sun. And from behind, the sound of hooves swelled again. They were trapped. The woman's hand found his arm, weak but urgent. "Please," she whispered once more. "Do it now before they arrive." The rider's jaw worked, torn between mercy and defiance, between the past he thought buried and the present clawing at him. His coat hung heavy at his side, the weight of choice heavier still. The canyon trembled with the roar of approaching riders. Shadows lengthened. Dust boiled. The rider looked down at her scarred face, at those eyes that had once belonged to someone he had loved or lost or maybe betrayed. His breath caught. His finger twitched near the holster. And that was when the first raider came into view, rifle raised, teeth bared in a grin. The rider turned his back to the woman, drew, and fired. The report split the canyon like thunder. The chase was no longer about escape. It was about reckoning. And the storyteller's voice, faint as the wind, whispered over the moment. Asterisk. So began the night when a wandering cowboy found a veiled woman at death's door, and the desert bore witness to a tale no man forgot. Asterisk. The first rider toppled from his saddle before his grin had time to fade, the echo of the cowboy's gunshot bouncing off the canyon walls like iron bells. The others pulled up short, shouting curses, rifles swinging toward the ledge. The cowboy shoved the woman lower in the saddle and wheeled his gelding around. Bullets whined past, smacking rock, kicking up gravel. The horse leapt forward, muscles straining, plunging down a narrow wash that cut toward the open desert. The woman clung weakly to him, whispering words he could barely hear. Prayers, pleas, or perhaps curses. He didn't know which. The raiders followed, a thunder of hooves, dust boiling around them. The canyon became a furnace of echoes, gunfire cracking, men hollering, the horse gasping for breath. The cowboy rode as though the devil himself clawed at his back. And still the woman's words haunted him. Asterisk, please, end me before they arrive. Asterisk. Hashtag the Desert Showdown. By the time the canyon opened into the desert plain, dusk had fallen, and the sky burned in streaks of crimson and gold. The cowboy pulled the gelding hard toward a cluster of abandoned buildings, the bones of a mining town long dead. Weathered wood, broken windows, a church steeple half fallen. The perfect place for a last stand. He dismounted, dragging the woman with him into the shadow of the old saloon. She stumbled, nearly falling, but his arm kept her upright. Her veil, torn now, revealed more of her face. The scars, the hollowed cheeks, the pain etched like scripture into her skin. Stay low, he muttered, eyes never leaving the horizon. The sound of hooves rolled nearer, louder. Raiders fanned out, circling the ghost town like wolves scenting blood. Their leader, a tall brute with a scar slashing his jawline, rode at the front. His voice carried sharp across the dead street. Hand her over, cowboy. Ain't no quarrel with you yet. The cowboy's hand hovered at his colt. Ain't gonna happen. The leader spat in the dirt, grinning with rotten teeth. Then you'll both die slow. The town fell silent except for the creak of leather, the whisper of wind through broken shutters. The woman sank against the saloon wall, her eyes wide, her lips moving without sound. The raiders dismounted as one, boots hitting dust, rifles gleaming in the dying light, and the cowboy stepped into the center of the street. Hashtag the folklore awakens. The storyteller's voice, carried on the wind, seemed a thread to the gathering night. Asterisk, they say he was just a wanderer, a man with no name worth remembering. But when the dust rose and the sun bled out, he stood like iron, and the earth itself held its breath. Asterisk, the cowboy's hand hovered near his colt, his stand steady, eyes locked on the leader. Time stretched, every sound sharp. The flap of a raven's wing, the jingle of spurs, the woman's ragged breath. The leader sneered. Kill him. Rifles raised. The cowboy drew. What followed was not battle, but judgment. His revolver sang in the dusk, every shot a nail driven into fate. 2 raiders dropped before they cleared their triggers. Another spun backward, rifle clattering from his hands. Dust and smoke wrapped the street as the fight tore loose. The raiders fired wild, bullets splintering wood, shattering glass. The cowboy moved like a man possessed, like one who had been here before, too many times. He reloaded with the grace of a gambler shuffling cards, eyes burning with something deeper than rage. One by one, the raiders fell. The woman, trembling, crawled toward the chapel steps, pulling a fallen rifle into her arms. Her hands shook, but when one raider broke past the cowboy and lunged for her, she pulled the trigger. The shot ripped him down. For the first time, her voice rang clear, not in fear, but defiance. The cowboy turned at the sound, eyes locking with hers. For a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, respect, and the ghost of the past that bound them. Hashtag the final duel. At last, only the leader remained, standing tall in the swirling dust, pistol in hand. His men lay scattered like broken idols around him. He stepped forward, sneering. "I know you," he growled. "You're the ghost they whispered about, the gunslinger who walked away when the killing got too much. Thought you'd buried that iron hand." The cowboy said nothing, just squared his shoulders, thumbed back the hammer of his Colt. The leader laughed low. "Let's finish it, legend." The street went silent. Shadows stretched long. The woman watched from the chapel steps, her scarred face lit by the last embers of sunset. The two men faced each other, death hanging between them like a drawn curtain. Then, as the clock tower struck the hollow note of 7, they drew. The leader's gun barked once. The cowboy's Colt roared in the same breath. For a moment, both stood frozen. Then the leader staggered, eyes wide, blood blooming across his chest. His pistol fell, clattering on stone. He hit the dust face first, the street swallowing his last breath. The cowboy lowered his smoking Colt, chest heaving, eyes dark with memories best left buried. Hashtag the aftermath. Silence fell heavy. Only the wind moved, carrying with the smell of gunpowder and blood. The woman struggled to her feet, the rifle slipping from her grasp. She stepped toward him slowly, veil fluttering in tatters. "You shouldn't have come for me," she whispered, voice breaking. He looked at her, long and hard. Didn't have a choice. For a moment, the years fell away. He saw her not as she was now, scarred, hunted, broken, but as she had once been, in the soft light of another life. That vision burned and cut him all at once. She reached for him, hand trembling, but stopped short. "They'll come again," she said. "More of them. They won't stop." His jaw set. "Then neither will I." The storyteller's voice rose one final time, carried on the desert wind. Asterisk. And so the cowboy stood, dust and blood at his boots, the past clawing at his heart. Beside him the veiled woman, scarred yet unbroken. The town never forgot that night, when death rode in and a forgotten gunslinger answered. Some say they vanished with the dawn. Others swear their shadows still walk the desert roads. But all agree on this, that justice was written in gun smoke, and the story has never stopped being told. Asterisk. The cowboy holstered his Colt, turned to the woman, and together they walked into the burning horizon. Two figures bound by scars, secrets, and a reckoning the desert would never let die.